Hey guys, let's talk about tonight's episode of The Walking Dead. And it was a good episode, but it wasn't one of my favorites. The last few episodes have really showed and paid a lot of attention to some of these individual characters and their journey to just survive since the jail pretty much went up in smoke. And where are they going to go to for survival? Like, what kind of situations are they getting themselves out of and into? And we dealt with a lot of that in this episode. So we spent a lot of time with Sasha, Bob, and Maggie, as well as Daryl and Beth again. And we're pretty much like just doing the exact same thing as we did in last week's episode. In this week's episode, Beth and Daryl find kind of like a funeral home, and they realize that somebody has recently been there because there's some stocked food in the cabinets and they're not, full of dust. So they're there, and they've searched the place and they've boarded it up and they've made it so that the front door is pretty much the only way to get in. And they set like a couple traps outside so that they can hear anything that comes to the door. And at first they hear a noise and it's a dog. So it kind of allows their guard to come down a little bit. And they're in the kitchen and they're eating some food. And it's interesting because earlier on in the episode, when they walked up to where this funeral home is, they passed a gravesite. And at first Beth stops and you can see that she starts to tear up a bit. And Daryl grabs a bunch of flowers and he puts it on the top and it says, like basically to a fallen father. So, Beth has a moment where she's grieving her dad, and then they go inside and, like I said, they're setting up shop, whatever. And then at one point they're having a conversation and Daryl's like, you don't need to leave a note for the people to thank them for the food. Maybe we'll just stay here for a while and we'll make this our new home and we'll deal with the people when they get here and we'll kind of all work together. And they're having this conversation and it starts to get a little bit like, quiet between the two of them. And she's like, oh, all of a sudden you believe that there could be some good people out there. And she's like, why do you feel this way now? And he's like looking at her and she's like, what? Tell me. And he doesn't say anything. And then it's almost like he's saying, well, it's because of you. And, they're starting to have this moment. And earlier on, like I said, when they were by the gravesite, Beth grabbed his hand and she was holding his hand and they kind of interlocked fingers. So that means a little bit more than just, cupping the hand or I don't know. It seems like these two are starting to make googly eyes at each other. And I just don't know how I feel about that. Because like I said in last week's episode, I think Daryl is a little bit too old for Beth. But that being said, whatever. I don't know how the show's going to play it out. But so right when, of course, they let their guard down and they're having this moment and then all of a sudden they hear this noise at the door again, and Daryl wrongfully assumes that it's the dog, and he opens it up, and like a bunch of zombies start coming at him through the door, and he screams to Beth, and he's telling her to run. And of course, she's like, I don't want to leave you, and the house is dark, and so he's like running through like the house, and the zombies are like hot on his trail, and he only has so many bows in that bow gun, whatever he's got, and so he's like gets himself down into the basement where they had like a cadaver on the table, pretty much like a dead guy on the table, and he's using it as a shield, and he's like stabbing all. I mean, my heart was like, like, listen, if we lose Daryl, that will be the day when my heart completely breaks on this show because he is truly one of my favorite characters on this show. So I was like, say it ain't so. Please do not let him go at this moment. Like, I'm just enjoying his character so much that I do not want to see him go in a moment like this. So he's trapped downstairs. He ends up sneaking underneath their legs and he gets behind another table and he's, got them all pushed up and he's stabbing them in the head. And he's like, I mean, it was crazy intense. And then he finally gets out of the house and he's running and he's looking for Beth. And all of a sudden he sees her bag on the ground and a car speeds off. Like, hello? Where did a car come from? And what the heck did they do with Beth? So Daryl's like running after her and he's chasing after her and he's screaming her name. And I mean, come on. So now Daryl's running down the road and it shows like the next day and he's still trying to like run after her and he's exhausted and he's like spent and he just looks devastated and he just like drops his little bow gun and he just creeps down. Like he just like basically stands there and he just falls to the ground and he's done. I mean, come on. So to wrap up that story, we see, from the point of view of like just him like sitting on the ground, like all hunched over, and we see these footsteps walk up, and my heart just is like, oh God, please please do not let this be the guys from the house where Rick was. And of course it is. And there's like 6 of them. And they surround him, and they've got like, one guy has his own bow, and then the other guys have like guns. And Daryl, like, he reaches down to Daryl, and Daryl quickly like gets up and he like punches him in the face with this thing, and then he's holding it at him, and so now they're in a standoff, and then this guy's basically saying, listen, you don't want to put a bow in my head, because as soon as you do, these guys are going to drop you like a sack of potatoes. And he's like, why shoot me when we can kill others, kind of thing. And then Daryl, kind of puts his thing down, and he says, my name's Joe. I think that's what he said. He said, my name's Joe. And he said, I'm Daryl. And so that's him introducing himself to this group of people who we have no idea who they are. All I know is they creeped the heck out of me when they were in the house with Rick, and God knows what they could possibly be up to. I mean, my fingers are crossed that they're good guys, but after what we saw in the last week's episode, I just don't trust it. So the other storyline, of course, was Bob, Sasha, and Maggie, following these train tracks. Well, first they were in a fog, and there were all these zombies coming at them, and that was pretty intense, and they're trying to save themselves from all these zombies. Bob almost gets bitten in the shoulder, and that's a bit of a scary moment. And they end up surviving, and of course, they make it out. But these guys have constantly been sort of butting heads a little bit, because Sasha is more of the mind frame like, listen, we need to, be safe here. Like, we can't just storm off in a fog. We need to protect ourselves, because, we're going to get attacked one of these times, and it's not just going to be, a small herd. It's going to be a massive one, and we're just going to be overpowered. And Maggie's like, look, we got to keep moving. I need to go find Glenn. And, Bob is like, we're all sticking together. So whatever the plan is, whether it's 2-on-1, we're sticking together. So they finally make themselves, of course, onto the train tracks, and they see the sign for Sanctuary. And Maggie's like, let's go. If Glenn sees this sign, he's going to try to find me in Sanctuary, in Terminus. And Sasha's really apprehensive. And Sasha, even though I think she believes her brother is still alive, she's not letting her mind go there. She's like, we need to get above ground. We need to be able to take control of the situation. We need to see what's coming at us. We need to be able to go try to get some food, get back. We need to stop just walking and trying to survive these elements. We need to start really giving ourselves more power in this situation. And of course, Maggie's like, I need to go find my man. And so she's off to find Glenn. I never hear her say, I need to see if my sister's alive. Like, where's Beth? But she's all consumed over Glenn. And Bob, at the very beginning of this episode, we got a little bit of his backstory as to how he met up with these guys at the prison, because, as you know, when we came into season 4, he was basically already there, and they were just talking to him as though when they found him, he was on his own. So we got a little bit of a glimpse into how he met up with Daryl and Glenn. And he was basically just one man on the road, walking, trying to survive, sleeping on top of trucks that he would find on the road, and just sort of getting by. And when they met up with him and they were, drilling him, how many zombies have you killed? How many people have you killed? And he had only killed one person at that point, and it was a woman, and she asked him to kill him and her. And, when Daryl says, you can come with us, and he's like, do you have any questions? He's like, no. And he's like, I don't really care who you guys are. Like, that's basically it. Like, I just need to be with people. And so, his journey it seems like with these 3 is he wants to at least get to a point where he's around people. And it's at that, whether it's almost good or bad, he doesn't know. He doesn't want to think that far ahead. He just wants to be able to get somewhere. And it's interesting to see the 3 different dynamics and how they're going about doing this. And of course, Maggie takes off on them, and she's violently kills a zombie and rips open its guts, and you're like, what is she doing? And she's using the blood to make a sign for Glenn, and she's basically saying, Glenn, follow me to Terminus, that's where I'll be. And she goes off, and of course Sasha's like, let her go, like, she wants to be on her own, let her go. She makes her own choice for her, but let's make our own choice for us. And of course Bob's like, I'm gonna go find her. And she's like, no, let's, do this. And then they find a building. She decides she wants to go stay in the building. And he's like, no, I'm going ahead. I'm going to go find her. And there's just, again, this back and forth between the two of them. And he gives her a kiss. And I think he's kind of hoping that this kiss is going to make her say, all right, fine, I'll come with you. And she's like, you don't have to leave. You don't have to be alone. And he's like, yes, I do. So she goes her way. He goes his way. She gets into the building. She sees that the place is open, it's abandoned, where at least where the room she's in. And then she looks out the window and she sees Maggie laying on the ground. So of course she goes out to go see what's up. And then there's a horde of zombies, and the two of them just, start stabbing one another, like stabbing all the zombies. And of course they have a conversation, and she's like, I ended up waiting here for you because I can't do it alone. I want to go find Glenn, but I can't do it by myself. Let's go find Bob. So again, it's like the three of them meet up. They have a nice little reunion again, and they're off to this Terminus place. I mean, the episode just felt a little bit slow. I mean, there were some moments where I was like, whoa, but all in all, I feel like at this point we need to get to the point here. I mean, it's good that they're really trying to show us how far away this place is from where they were, where the prison was and everything. I get that. But now, this is like the 5th episode since the break, and we need to start getting somewhere. And I felt like there wasn't even enough backstory in this, except for the fact that we got to meet these new guys, Joe and his bandits. And at the very, very end, Glenn ended up seeing the signs for Terminus and Sanctuary. So it looks like Glenn will be on the right track to finding his love. So, that's fine, but I feel like this show is starting to lose a little bit of its momentum. It came out of the gate really swinging after the break, and now we're starting to slow down a bit. So I need the show to start to pick up and get back to some juicy drama. All right, guys, let me know what you thought of this episode. Are you thinking that Terminus is going to be a place like Woolbury, whatever it was called before, that crazy town where the governor was head of? Do you think it's going to be like normal, sane people? What do you think is going to happen once they all get there? We didn't see Michonne or Rick or Carl in this episode. We haven't seen Tyrese in this episode, Carol since a couple episodes ago as well. So I'm sure that they'll be making an appearance in next week's episode. But I'm hoping that we can at least get everybody sort of back together and meeting up, and where's Beth? And, now is Daryl going to be sucked into this group of crazies, and, he's going to once again lose all hope and be back to being Mr. Grumpy Pants? I hope not. Anyway, let me know what you guys thought. This episode, not my favorite. So hopefully we can get back on track next week. All right, guys, I'll see you all next week. Bye.